So we're going to talk about the cell. We're going to define it, talk about what it is, talk about the cell address, and use the name box to identify the active cell. And finally, we're going to insert and delete some cells. So the cell is the smallest functioning structure in the workbook, on the worksheet. Before we talk about the cells, though, I want to talk about how many there are on each worksheet. Currently, the worksheet is 16,384 columns wide and over 1 million rows long. And when you multiply those two numbers, you get the total number of cells on the worksheet. That total is over 17 billion. So sort of just for fun, I took the size, the standard size of the cells, measured in terms of pixels, for the column width and the row height. And I got that by left-clicking and holding down the mouse button. The height of the row is 20 pixels. The width of the column is 64 pixels. And although this isn't perfect, this is sort of an estimate, I then multiplied the number of pixels by the number of columns and rows, and there's a number of pixels per inch that's sort of standard, 96 per inch. Converted that to inches, converted that to feet, and then converted the number of feet to the number of miles. So in a standard worksheet, if you printed it out, you'd need a piece of paper that's about 0.17 miles wide by 3.45 miles long. And if you increase the size of the columns and rows to the maximum width and height, you'd need a piece of paper that's almost 5 miles wide and more than 94 miles long. So that's just a couple of fun, or maybe not so fun facts. So the cell. The cell is the smallest functional unit in the worksheet, as I said. They're fairly amazing. The content that they can carry, the flexibility of the cells, the types of data that you can put in, the formatting you can do, and we'll get into all of that. But first, we're just going to talk about the cell, the essence of the cell. When I click on a cell, the row and column heading become highlighted. This cell, the row is number 4, the column heading is C. That identifies the address of this cell, which is C4. I can click on another cell, that's E2, and it's stated in that way. It's column row, E2. E2 right now is the active cell, and this will become important as we go and cover more material. And the active cell is shown in the name box, E2. When I select a region, the active cell is L4, but I can make the active cell a different cell by pressing the Tab key or the Shift+Tab key. So the active cell is not always in the upper left-hand corner of the region. So the relationship between the name box and the active cell is a two-way street. I can input a cell address in the name box and hit enter, and the active cell becomes that cell that I just entered into the name box. The next thing we're going to talk about is inserting and deleting cells. I've zoomed in on a worksheet here and put numbers 1 through 5 in column E. There's two places that we're going to work with. One is the shortcut menu. You can right-click and get the shortcut menu. And the other is the insert and delete command buttons in the cells group on the Home tab. And that's where we're going to start. I want to escape out of that. When I click the insert button, we insert a cell and move all of the content down. Now, when I say we insert a cell, we haven't increased the number of rows in this worksheet. It still has the same number of rows, and I can show you that by using the count blank function and selecting the total column C. We have 1,048,576 rows. And when I insert another cell, we still have 1,048,576. So what we're really doing is separating the data, and when we delete a cell, the reverse happens. Now there's other options on the Insert and Delete tab because there's a drop-down menu, and we'll get to those in other movies. As I said, the other way we can do this is getting the shortcut menu and clicking Insert, and in this case, we have a few more options. The default is to shift cells down, and that's what happens when we click the command button in the ribbon. But we can also shift the cells to the right. When I choose that one, what happens is exactly what you would think would happen. And then when we delete, we have the same options. We can shift the cells up or we can shift them back to the left. So that's an introduction to the cell. We talked about how many cells there are in the standard worksheet. We talked about the cell address, and we identified the active cell and the relationship between the active cell and the name box. And then we used the shortcut menu and some command options on the ribbon to insert some cells and to delete some cells.